Hi, I'm Alex Barron with Digital Research, and I'm sitting here in downtown San Francisco with the CTO and co-founder of Crittercism, Robert Kwok. Hi, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, so my name is Robert Kwok. I'm the co-founder and the CTO of Crittercism. Basically, Crittercism, it's a company maybe not many people have heard of, but it's on everyone's devices actually. And we're kind of the people that are sitting in the background making sure that apps are running well. And that's kind of the mission of the company has been, there's this great proliferation of phones and devices across the world. There's going to be more phones than people at some point. And all this, technology is great for, improving the world. We're there to kind of make sure it's all running well. So we make a product that kind of sits in the background, and whenever there's a problem with an app, maybe it crashes, maybe it's slow, we detect when those problems occur and help companies fix those issues.
Okay, perfect. So, you mentioned that most people might not have heard of Crittercism, but they've probably actually sort of interacted with it in some sense because, you guys are working with a ton of major applications. Can you mention some of the names that you're working with?
Yeah, we're working with anyone from Nike to PayPal to eBay to Fortune 500 companies to games. In Japan, we're in DNA's app. So I think almost any app that you thought of, we might be on it.
Okay, excellent. So, what makes Crittercism in your mind sort of stand out in the market? Of course, there's competitors and other players in the field. What makes Crittercism special?
There's a couple different things. I think we were one of the earliest people in the market, and we were focused on mobile to begin with. And we kind of came from a background of app developers. We were developing apps ourselves for our online dating site. That's another story. But so we kind of came from that background, and we wanted to make these apps great. So we have that kind of mobile DNA within the company. And then because we started so early, we've seen the market evolve over time. So we know what issues have come up. We've been there for every single operating system on Apple, for example, supporting Apple Watch. And we kind of have the breadth of support for all the different mobile platforms. So everything from iOS to Android, Windows to PhoneGap to Unity to Xamarin. So we support all those platforms. And one of the areas that's made us unique most recently is kind of being able to tie these performance issues back to business metrics. So we've begun to kind of focus on optimizing user experience in applications. So it's one thing to know that an app crashed, for example, but to be able to say, hey, that crash happened for a first-time user, or that happened when a user was trying to make a purchase in the application. And being able to tie back to those business metrics and let you know how are you affecting those business metrics.
Okay, interesting. So it sounds like many different people within a company could potentially use Crittercism, from developers to ops guys to business people as well.
Yeah.
So in terms of day-to-day use, how does Crittercism fit into a typical day of a business guy running an app, a business or a developer? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so mobile's new for so many different companies, so they're actually looking at us to give them a lot of data for what they should do, what best practices are, and to give them more metrics to know what to monitor for their application. So one thing we launched, I think about a year ago, is called data.crittercism.com, and that kind of gives you open sources some of our data and lets you see larger trends in terms of which operating systems are the most stable, which are the least stable. And so as a business person, you can, actually get these metrics about your app. So one of the most popular ones that we talk about all the time is crash rate. And a lot of the times you'll have a new customer come on board and they'll put our SDK in, and then suddenly they'll know about all these different crashes in their application that they had no idea about. Before using us, a lot of them were just looking at App Store reviews or their CEO. We had one case where our CEO was using an app and it crashed, and he said, guys, this is terrible. We need to stop everything we're doing and fix this crash. And we kind of changed that by providing data and giving companies, enabling to have more data-driven decisions around things. So being able to say, hey, let's prioritize this crashing issue, or let's prioritize this latency issue in the application because it's affecting how people check out. And then for engineering teams, they can actually trend this information over time and see, version 1 was 5% crash rate, and version 2 it went down to 3%. or the checkout rate in my application increased because we fixed all these performance issues in my application. So it's kind of changed the way companies do things and operate for mobile.
Okay, excellent. And it sounds like all that stuff is totally tied into revenue monitoring as well. So if there's a crash that happens, you know exactly how much it's costing you. Prioritize that rather than some crash that might not really be losing you that much money.
Yeah, I think revenue is part of it, and I think a lot of the players that are new to mobile that have placed a lot of importance in mobile have been in the e-commerce space, and we've seen that as one of our biggest areas of growth. But I think across all applications, what people are really interested in is the user experience of the application. So yes, it's important and it's easy to measure if there's a monetary transaction that occurs, but it can cover any important user flow is what a lot of companies monitor. So things like login or account registration, or even how long it takes for the app to start up, because we found that it's highly correlated to engagement in applications. So these are all kind of metrics that are maybe a little bit new to people in mobile, but these are the kinds of things that we're starting to hear and customers are starting to talk about more.
Okay. So you mentioned load time has a big impact on engagement.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a sort of average number that app developers should be worried about? Like if it's over a certain number, they're really losing a lot of engagement?
Yeah, so we will be publishing some data about this soon, but if you look at kind of usability studies, there's a certain amount of time that humans kind of have, their attention span is a certain length of time, right? So if you're sitting there waiting for an app to load and it takes more than 2 minutes and nothing happens, then you might just shut down that app and use the competitor's app. I'm sure we've all done that before.
Yeah, every day.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of a specific use case, is there some company that you'd like to talk about and brag about how Crittercisms has helped them?
Yeah, there's a couple of them. I mean, we've had some case studies on the portal, but some of my favorite, I guess, one of them is Groupon. So they're a longtime customer of ours, and they have one. We're talking about crash rates of applications. And so we were talking, actually we had a customer advisory panel where we had a bunch of customers in the room where we were all talking about how they use Crittercism, and it came up, what's the crash rate of your application? And everyone went around and said, oh, mine's 2%, 3%, 1%, and Groupon's was less than 0.1%, and they were pretty proud of that. So that was a metric that they could go back to their team and see that was going really well. And then that highly correlated to the ratings in the App Store. So if you look at the ratings of their Groupon Android app, that's it's 4.5 stars in the App Store. And then that's also then correlates to a lot of the business metrics like downloads and engagement and all that stuff. And so it's all kind of tied together. I think that's one. We've also solved a lot of deep technical issues for companies as well. So we've had companies kind of mobile, sometimes we call it this cowboy programming or the Wild West. And so we've had a lot of companies where they've integrated a bunch of analytics providers in the app because what's more data the better, right? But it turns out all these third-party SDKs can also cause a lot of issues in applications, right? So we had a large financial services company. It turned out one of their developers had just added an analytics package to their app. And then suddenly they're seeing huge latency in their app. It was slowing down. Customers couldn't use the app anymore. And when they put in our system, that's when they saw hey, this SDK is causing issues. And they actually removed that because of us. So that's another kind of fun story I like to tell.
Yeah, it's super interesting. So in terms of the setup, if you're a brand new Crittercism user, how quickly can you get up to speed and start getting data?
Yeah, so that's one of the areas we really focused on early on. I think it's made a big difference. We wanted to make sure that Crittercism was as easy to use as possible. So literally, actually we had one developer tell us it took them, I think the record is 13 seconds. So you can basically drag and drop a file, copy and paste 2 lines of code, and then you're done. You're getting data flowing to your system. You can see, when people load the app, when there's performance issues right away. So that was an area that we really wanted to make great for the company.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
And then in terms of getting integration set up, how does Crittercism integrate with other tools that a company might use?
Yeah, so we're working on a lot of different ways right now, and there's a lot of ways we're currently working with them. So, for development teams, we have integration with all the bug tracking systems. So if you have a crash, you can push those into other systems. We have a bunch of operations integrations. So we have a Splunk connector where we can push our data into monitoring into Splunk if you want to. We also have integrations with a lot of dashboard companies. So if you want to tie our data to analytics companies or to your ad dollars, you can put those onto one dashboard. And that's why, and really our focus has been on our API and making that into a first-class citizen, because the mobile ecosystem is so rich and people are using so many different tools. We wanted to make it easy to connect to those different systems. So one of the big partnerships we've been working on lately is our Adobe partnership, which we launched a couple months ago. And so we're starting a beta for that soon, and that's one we're really excited about, being able to tie engagement data to performance data. Has been one of the really big asks from our customers, especially on the business side.
Yeah, makes sense. So let's change gears a little bit, and I'd like to know a bit about your background, what were you doing before Crittercism, what led you to create this company?
Yeah, so I went to school at MIT and I was doing some mobile stuff there, but more on the pocket PCs and stuff like that. So a little older school, I guess, in terms of the mobile world. And then I joined HP for a while, and then after that we started working on an online dating site with actually that's the first iteration of Crittercism, was an online dating site. It wasn't called Crittercism, but and dating is an incredibly tough industry, and we basically after a year and a half kind of failed at it. But luckily we were making mobile apps at the time as a way to get distribution, and some of the issues we ran into at the time were, our app would crash, it was slow, we couldn't get feedback from customers, and so we kind of built something for ourselves and then, launched it to the market. And I think it was like 3 months after we launched, we saw Netflix sign up on our beta list, and I said, whoa, Netflix. And so we actually, didn't call them back, and they ended up calling us, and they said, hey, we signed up on your beta list, like, what's going on? And so we went down there to Santa Clara, and gave them a demo, and they became one of our first customers a couple months after that. So that's kind of a long story cut short. There's a lot of suffering and eating $5 Subway sandwiches and in between, but it's been a real surreal experience.
Yeah, I'd love to get a little bit into the suffering in a moment.
Sure, yeah.
But I think it's a great win that you have such a big name company like Netflix signing up for your beta, and then sort of harassing you to be like, hey, come pitch us and sell us more. I think that's probably the best sign that a startup could possibly get, that they're onto something and they have a product that people really want.
Yeah, we had no idea early on. Like, we thought maybe a couple developers would use it. We knew a bunch of app developers that said, yeah, I totally need this, and there's nothing in the market that does this today. But it turned out, every company kind of had this problem.
So did you ever find out how Netflix found out exactly about your data?
So we went through a startup incubator called AngelPad, and then we did our demo day, and then after launch we raised a little bit of money for our seed round. And I guess there was a TechCrunch article that came out, and then they happened to see that TechCrunch article, and then they contacted us.
Okay, so let's get into the suffering a little bit. I want to know, what were the biggest challenges in that first year or two, and how did you overcome them?
So there's a lot of challenges. Actually, one of the things that didn't have a challenge with it, I think a lot of companies did, was our founding team was always rock solid throughout the last 5 years, and we've been through a lot together, and that's one thing I'm really thankful of. Andrew, Jian, and I kind of had known each other for a long time. We were roommates, and it was just a great situation where our idea changed a lot, and a lot of companies kind of come together because they're passionate about an idea, which we were, but we were all kind of committed to each other and kind of making things work for each other. And so there were never any kind of major arguments. There were never any fights between us. There were arguments and we disagreed on things, but we always solved it well. And so that's one of the things I appreciated. But yeah, I mean, we went through a lot. We went through many different iterations of our idea, like even the online dating site. So we came together around an idea around, let's target people looking for dates. And then we switched to let's focus on couples. And then we switched to let's make mobile apps for couples. And then finally, nothing related to online dating. We're doing, performance monitoring for mobile apps. So all of those changes were quite painful, but we kind of made it through.
Okay. fair enough. Yeah, I think that the relationship that you have with the co-founders is probably critical, and it really is fortunate that you have had experience working with other projects and going back a few years now. So prior to even the dating apps, how did you first meet your fellow co-founders?
Yeah, so Andrew and I, we worked at HP together, and we were also roommates at the time. So we've known each other for a long time. And then Gian and I actually go even further back. We both went to school at MIT together, and my first girlfriend was actually her roommate in college.
So in terms of advice for startup founders, you guys have tried a few different iterations of dating app. Now you have this application monitoring service that's doing very, very well.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for startup founders out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one is kind of get the founding team right. Make sure that you all respect each other and you all care about each other and you all trust each other. I think that's the biggest thing. I think founding this company and watching it grow is to see, I think trust and kind of passion are kind of the two big things that are really necessary for a company, because things will change, markets will change, you'll gain customers, you'll lose customers, and you'll work on products that fail, but it's about learning from those mistakes and then being able to trust each other enough to know that, one, they will learn, and two, that, you'll work together to make things work.
And I think you hit on a key point earlier when you talked about how you guys would never argue sort of personally, you'd always argue about getting the solution right.
Yeah.
And this came from a passion of getting everything right and being successful rather than turning into an ego thing.
Yeah.
I believe in one thing, you believe in another.
Yeah. So. Yeah, that's one of the things I really liked about Andrew, actually. I think he's, whenever we're, problem solving some difficult issue, like, anything that's happened in the past, he always kind of looks for, how do we make progress here? Like, what are we going to change? What's useful to talk about? And he always comes at it with a sense of humor as well, which I also very much appreciate. So humor, I guess, maybe the third element to a founding team.
I think that's fair. It certainly helps diffuse a tense situation if there's ever any.
Definitely.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Now, you mentioned the Adobe partnership is a big thing coming up in the future. Mm-hmm. What else is next for Crittercism?
So, what we want to do is kind of focus on this idea of customer experience. So, one of the concepts we've been talking about is just measuring the responsiveness of applications. And a lot of companies, don't know what factors to look at. So we're talking about app load time, for example. That's a common user flow in application, has direct correlation to engagement and sort of those business metrics. But if you look at App Store reviews, there's apps that crashing is a big part of it, but UI performance, how long it takes for a page to load, how long it takes for you clicking a button to getting to what you actually want to achieve, or the app freezing when you're trying to do something. I mean, how many times have you loaded an app and then suddenly you just see a white screen? You're like, what happened, right? So it's just kind of pinpointing those kind of performance issues that people don't really know about, but they know about, but they don't really track officially. And then tying those back to these business metrics that a lot of companies are already tracking, like engagement, retention, and then seeing, how, and then building the intelligence to say, we've collected all this data from all these different apps. We can say, if you fix this in your application, your engagement's going to go up by X amount. So being able to, really help companies make that, that big push and make sure their app goes from good to great.
Okay, good stuff. Now we better wrap, but I want to give you a chance to plug Crittercism. Where can people go to learn more about your company?
Sure. If you guys want to check out Crittercism, just go to our website, www.crittercism.com. You can sign up for an account and then actually start using the product in hopefully 20 seconds or less.
Okay. Thanks so much, Robert.
Yeah, thank you.